One of the best things about the first Dead Rising game would have to be the psychopaths that you can find littered around the mall. Personally, I think that the psychopaths and the small bite-sized encounters that they offer are even more memorable than the storyline for the most part. These people are so unique, silly, and interesting that they kind of steal the show from me a lot of the time. So I thought today, in honor of these insane mall-goers, we'd count down a list of some of my favorite psychopaths to come out of the first game. Keep in mind that this is my list, and as such will certainly differ from yours, so feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments down below. All that being said, let's kick this list off with... Chiang is one of the few psychopaths that is tied to the main questline of the game. Coming in near the end of Frank's adventures in Willamette, Larry Chiang is a butcher that has a processing area in the underground parking garage of the mall. During the story, you'll visit this area of the map as you attempt to disarm bombs that the main antagonist Carlito has set up all throughout the zombie-infested tunnels. The end result of this section of the story being Carlito getting into an altercation with an ally of yours named Brad, who deals this maniac a brutal wound. Cut to a bit later in your adventure, and you'll see on the security tapes that your arch-enemy has been captured by someone in those very same tunnels. And that someone is none other than Larry Chiang.
The guy being dragged? I think it's Carlito.
You could be right.
I've always liked Larry. I think that cannibals are interesting, and I'd love to see what brought him to the point of eating people. If it was something that happened before the zombie apocalypse, or if he just cracked under their attacks. Sadly, Dead Rising isn't really a game where specific characters get much backstory. You mainly just get what you get from the interactions that you have with them. So, to that end, I think that Larry is one of the most memorable psychopaths that you'll come across. For me, this spot was a toss-up between Cletus from the gun shop and Larry. I ended up going with Larry because I think that his boss fight is less annoying. So, mainly because I find Larry's chipper attitude toward his grotesque indulgences, and because his boss fight is a bit more enjoyable than some of the others, Larry Chiang ekes out the 5th spot on this list. Most of Dead Rising's enemies are pretty weird. You have Larry, who is very open and happy to sell human meat to his customers. You have Joe, whose weird death convulsions are just, I don't know, weird. But perhaps my pick for the most eccentric character that you'll meet in this game would probably go to supermarket manager extraordinaire, Stephen Chapman. Stephen Chapman is exceptionally protective of his merchandise. Not only that, but everything that he does at 100%. I mean, even after you've defeated him, his final thoughts are on the preservation of his beloved supermarket.
Clean up! Register 6! Ugh.
Stephen also has one of the most unique weapons in the game that is very fitting to his outlandish dedication to Sion's food and stuff. A shopping cart that's been outfitted with all manner of blades and sharp objects. A shopping cart which he apparently uses to hold anyone foolish enough to enter into his store in an attempt to vandalize it. To me, Stephen's personality and love of his job is what helps him stand out. He's another character that's tied to the main storyline, so if you're following that, then you're gonna have to run across him. And while I don't find his boss fight overly memorable, this guy mainly sticks out with me for his over-the-top absurdity and extra enthusiasm. Even if that enthusiasm is mainly focused on making you a Frank kebab. Keenan is the leader of the True Eye or Raincoat cult, which is what earns him this spot on the list. Sean himself isn't really the most memorable person in the game. Sure, his boss fight in the movie theater is something that I think most people would remember, but what really earns him this spot on the list is being the climax to the random cultists that just show up out of nowhere to flood Paradise Plaza. Sean and his cult change the dynamics of the mall more than almost any other psychopath that you come across in the game, with the exception of perhaps the military in the end. For starters, they scatter their poster all around the mall in the middle of your adventure with a bright pink sign that really stands out. And they also take up residence all around Paradise Plaza, which is probably your most traveled section of the mall. They're also just very different by virtue of them being a collective. As for what they believe, it's pretty vague, but the cult seems to be centered around killing people who have tainted blood. They also, like the military, can abduct you instead of killing you. If they manage to spray Frank with a knockout agent, then he will be taken to a building in the outdoor area to be sacrificed at a later date, presumably. To me, the True Eye cult is one of the most memorable things that stands out in this game. And while most of the reasons why aren't really pinned on Sean Keenan individually, he is the climax to the cult's involvement in the mall, so he worships his way to the third spot on this list. Few side characters in Dead Rising really get any kind of meaningful backstory. People like Chapman aren't really given any reasons as to why they turn full psycho and just start butchering everyone that they see. However, one of the characters that does have a reason for how he behaves in this game is the hardware store psychopath, Cliff Hudson. From your initial interactions with Cliff, it's pretty clear that he's off his rocker, having several bodies strung up in the store with so much blood everywhere that it looks like a bright red slip and slide. Cliff comes after Frank, suffering from PTSD from his time in Vietnam, and his fight mirrors that mentality to a degree, with Cliff jumping in and out of air ducts as if they were underground bunkers, and tossing explosives as if he's lobbing grenades. Cliff's fight is interesting and can be pretty difficult, especially if you can't locate him quickly when he essentially teleports via the air ducts. However, the most distinct thing about Cliff would have to be what he tells you after you've defeated him.
My granddaughter. She was done in by those damn zombies. When I heard her scream, I just lost it.
Now, I don't know anything about PTSD, but seeing your family torn to shreds sounds like a plausible reason to force you back into the mind frame that Cliff falls into. So, to me, Cliff is probably the most sympathetic psychopath in this entire game. And even though he went absolutely insane as a result of what happened, to an extent, I can empathize. Also, he looks like Michael Rooker to me. Nothing to do with anything, I just always think that when I see Cliff in the game. For some reason, clowns have become this massive horror film and game phenomenon. I've never really understood the fear of clowns, as they've never really been something that scares me. I don't look at Ronald McDonald and think that he wants to pick his teeth with my bones. However, despite this, I still find myself liking clowns in whatever horror-related thing that they happen to crop up in. And Adam McIntyre from Dead Rising is no exception. Adam is, with the exception of the first encounter with Carlito, I think the first psychopath that you'll come across in this game. Which is to say, he comes in at a point where you aren't really sure what to be expecting from this game yet. So, when you encounter him, he helps to set this quirky, silly, and sadistic tone that the psychopaths follow for much of the game. Adam is a clown, dressed in the whole getup, and it seems like he's a clown with a lot of dedication to his craft. And while his motivation for being a complete lunatic is kind of silly, he's mad because no one laughs at his jokes anymore since the zombie apocalypse. Probably not what should be the pinnacle of his priorities. Adam is still one of the smarter psychopaths that we come across. Adam has figured out a way to stop the zombies from coming around his corner of the mall, and it's not just because he'll kill them like most of the other psychos. Instead, Adam has figured out that with the amusement ride going at full speed, the zombies will avoid coming near it. To me, Adam is the most memorable psychopath in this game. He's not as over-the-top silly as someone like Steven, and he doesn't have the backstory of someone like Cliff, But even without those things, there's just something about a chainsaw-wielding clown that is always interesting. He also has a fun fight to go along with his aesthetics, blowing up explosive balloons and throwing knives like a true carnival clown. So for all those reasons, Adam is my pick for the best psychopath to come out of this game.
Huh? Everyone used to laugh at me. I was a walking punchline. But not anymore.
Anyways, those are my picks. What are yours? Feel free to let me know what you think in the comments down below. Since I played this game all the way back on the Xbox 360, it's been one of my favorite zombie games of all time. I'd love to do lore videos on it, but most of the characters unfortunately don't have much backstory to really delve into. However, its characters are still quite fun and vibrant, which makes this game stand out to me as a very fun one to explore. All that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you all in the next one.